A story a day.
All right. We've got, barely 10 minutes to go, so I'll try and speed it up if I can. And of course, it's all about the man who celebrates 98 years today. Born January 23rd, 1920. Charles Mogane Njonjo. By the way,
Charles?
Mogane, M-U-G-A-N-E. Mogane. His father was a very famous Kikuyu chief, colonial chief.
Okay.
Very famous. I mean, this
Just
is...
like you are great-grandfather.
No, not great. Grandfather.
Huh?
My grandfather, not great. Yeah. So anyway, Njonjo is probably the closest equivalent Kenya has to aristocracy, because when he was going to school as a kid, he would ride a horse to school. Colonial time, he's riding a horse to school. Fast forward, ends up in Alliance, one of the very first few students, local black students, to be in Alliance.
Wow.
He was there alongside Dr. Joroge Mungai, Dr. Munywa Wayaki, and from Alliance, they all, again, the privilege of the time, they all went to Fort Hare University in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Fort Hare, very famous for black elite black Africans. So, Njonjo finds himself in the same class as Robert Mugabe. He finds a guy called Nelson Mandela is in his dorm. Another guy called Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi. All these guys are in their form. Of course, Dr. Joroge Mungai also shows up there, and Dr. Munywa Wayaki. Elite black. Remember, South Africa is still under apartheid, right?
That's true.
And Kenya is still under colonial rule. But these guys are going out.
Wow.
From Fort Hare, they all branch out. Dr. Joroge Mungai ends up at Stanford University in America. Imagine. In the 40s, 30s, 40s. Stanford. Njonjo ends up in London, UK, studying law, of course. Dr. Munywa Wayaki ends up in Scotland, studying medicine. See what's happening? It's the 30s and the 40s, and these guys are
climbing.
They're climbing. They're going to school. They're getting educated, because later on, they would be needed, obviously. So Njonjo gets his law degree, practices for a bit in the UK. By the time he's finished and practicing, it's 1963. And Mzee Jomo Kenyatta is looking for a cabinet. Who does he pick?
As his first choice.
These same individuals who I've just talked about. Njonjo becomes the first Attorney General. Dr. Joroge Mungai becomes Foreign Affairs Minister. Dr. Munywa Wayaki becomes... Munywa Wayaki is Foreign Affairs. Dr. Joroge Mungai was Health. Yeah, Health in the beginning. So he's picking all these guys who all come back.
The
intellectuals. But privileged in a way, right? I mean, because the airlift had just happened in 58, right? And that was very fresh, because this is 1963, and there's already been people who have gone and come back. So they are picked in the first cabinet. Charles Njonjo in his typical three-piece pinstripe suit. One we saw in 1963, and the same one we've seen in 2018. The consistency in that man. Fresh rose every morning. The watch that comes here on the vest, on the waistcoat. The watch, so he could look on the watch and then put it back in. Typical English man. So anyway.
So that thing that comes here is a watch?
Yeah, it's a watch, that golden thing. Hiyo ni saa anatoa anaangalia alafu anarudisha.
All right.
Anyway, he serves 15 years as Attorney General. 1976, as Kenyatta was ailing, there was a lot of rumors and talk and rumblings. What are we going to do once Kenyatta dies? What's the transition? Of course, there was a section of leaders from the Rift Valley in particular who did not want Moi to automatically succeed Kenyatta. In fact, they formed this anti-terrorist unit, this paramilitary unit called Ngorokos. Did you ever hear that word?
Yeah, Ngorokos. Yeah.
Ngorokos. It was supposed to be an anti-stock theft unit, but it was actually a parallel military unit run by this guy who was in charge of the police in the Rift Valley called James Mungai. Tough, powerful, feared fella. The Ngorokos were the ones who were going to take over once Kenyatta died, just in case, because they didn't want Moi to be president. At the same time, Njonjo saw all this, and he went and whispered to Kenyatta. He says, look, there's some people here who are talking about life after you die. And, I think you should say it's treasonous. It should be treasonous for people to discuss this. Kenyatta gives him the go-ahead. He goes to Parliament and he announces, it is treasonous for you to discuss Kenyatta's death. You can't. You're not allowed. You just cannot. That ruling or that statement in Parliament killed the whole story. But the Nkorokos were still on the side just in case. Fast forward, August 22nd, 1978, Mzee Kenyatta passes away. And obviously Njonjo had checkmated everyone as Attorney General to make sure that his friend, and he now developed a close relationship with Moi. Moi came in, this transition was very smooth, and he always had Njonjo to thank for that. Because Njonjo made sure that all these rebel MPs did not in any way interfere with him succeeding Kenyatta as president. First 4 years, Njonjo was always seen next to Moi. Njonjo, Gigi Kariuki, and Nicholas B. Watt. All those three tight with Moi. And the first 4 years, it was fantastic. Moi did what he said he would do, which is fuata nyayo, following the footsteps of Jomo Kenyatta. Until that August morning in 1982, when a section of Kenya Air Force tried to overthrow this government.
Led by Ochuka,
correct. And Moi, from that time, he changed his position completely. So much so that he's, obviously rumors, propaganda, nini, all this stuff. He didn't trust anyone after that. There was always talk that Njonjo had his own ambitions, that he always wanted to be president at one point. And and he saw Moi as, maybe just a stepping stone to the presidency. Obviously, Njonjo could not become president from Attorney General. So the man who was a member of parliament for, I think it was Kabete then, stepped down. Njonjo retired or resigned as Attorney General and ran for MP of Kabete. Of course, was elected, was made Minister for Constitutional Affairs back then. And now this coup happens. And there's rumors, innuendos, all kinds of things. And they say, hey, man, maybe that friend of yours who just resigned as Attorney General, maybe he wants to be president. So all of a sudden, Njonjo found himself on the receiving end. The man who made sure that Moi became president was now vilified. Moi, in his usual way, would say, hey, we have a traitor in our midst. They called him Msaliti. And of course, all the fingers pointed to Njonjo. Boom. He was forced to resign, went to court. There was a huge hearing held on it. Every single day he would show up in court. Same thing. Pinstripe suit, fresh rose watch. In fact, one time, because this hearing went on for quite a while, there's a photographer, and I think this is online somewhere. The photographer took a real close-up of this suit one time. Instead of the pinstripes, the stripes, there were his initials on the pinstripe suit. CN, 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 CN. That's how some of the suits were. Charles Njonjo. So anyway, in the end, as the lawyers were going back and forth and they were piling all this kind of stuff on him, Moi, in typical Moi fashion, one day declared in a rally, I forgive that man. Boom. And it ended just like that. Njonjo, being the English gentleman he is, typical, he disappeared for the next 20 years. Never gave an interview, hardly showed up in public. He literally just disappeared. From 82 or 83 till about, just when Kibaki was elected, that's when people started seeing Njonjo again. 20 years he disappeared. Doing his thing, of course, raising a family, all that stuff. But he was never, ever seen in public, never commented in public. Wow. And then slowly started coming back after Kibaki was elected and came to office. He started slowly coming back. And then, of course, aligning with Baba. He's been very close to Baba throughout the time. And, he's a very loyal guy. Once he supports you to the very end. Fast forward again. January 23rd, 2018, the man turns 98. He's probably outlived most of his colleagues, most of his generation. How many are left? Wow, very, very few. But Njonjo still, swims every day. Has at least a bottle of beer or a glass of wine every day. He said it's good for the soul. He was driving up until the other day, driving himself around. I think up until 96 years old, with his driver beside him, but he was driving around. Icon, man, icon. Love him or hate him, this guy is a part of Kenyan history. Literally the last of the Mohicans. He was Attorney General when when Tom Mboya was assassinated. He was Attorney General when J.M. Kariuki was assassinated. He was Attorney General when Pio Gama Pinto was assassinated. If there's any one man who knows where all the skeletons are buried, it's this man here. And he continues on. I think he'll make 100. There's a good chance he'll make 100. Wow. January 23rd, 1920. We say a happy birthday to Sergio.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Sir Charles. Happy birthday to you. And that's what we call a story a day.